Kobe Bryant, aka the Black Mamba, one of the greatest athletes of all time, a career only a few players can rival. His incredible plays puts people on their feet, fans oohing and awing. His daggers broke the hearts of opposing teams and fans. Kobe was one of the greatest that's ever put on a pair of sneakers, and left fans wanting more when he retired. When he tragically passed away, he left an empty hole in my heart, and I'm sure fans worldwide all feel the same way. Kobe was an incredible basketball player, and in this video, I want to pay tribute to one of the greatest of all time. The journey of his illustrious career, a skinny kid from Philadelphia to an all-time great, and everything in between. Kobe Bryant was born on August 23, 1978 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His father, Joe Jellybean Bryant, played 8 seasons in the NBA before heading over to Europe to finish out his professional career. Kobe spent a good chunk of his childhood in Italy. Once Joe was done playing, the Bryant family moved back to Philly, and this is where Kobe's basketball brilliance started. Kobe attended Lower Merion High School, and in his senior year, he led the school to the first state championship in over 50 years. Seeing the success of Kevin Garnett, who went straight to the pros after high school, Kobe followed. Kobe was taken with the 13th pick in the star-studded 1996 draft by the Charlotte Hornets and was traded to his favorite team, the Los Angeles Lakers, on draft night for Vlade Divac. The deal almost fell apart when Vlade Divac threatened to retire, but eventually Divac relented on his decision, and the trade finally became official on July 9, 1996. Kobe was so young, even his parents had to co-sign his rookie deal with the Lakers. Lakers GM Jerry West shocked the world by luring Shaquille O'Neal from the Orlando Magic, bringing him to Hollywood. Jerry West told Shaq that Kobe, a young kid he just traded for, would help him win an NBA championship. Shaq had no idea who Kobe was, and even laughed about it. But those two will become one of the best 1-2 punch ever. In his rookie year, Kobe played behind Eddie Jones and saw limited minutes. The highlight of his rookie year was winning the slam dunk contest at the All-Star Weekend. In Game 5 of the playoff series against the Utah Jazz, Shaq fouled out with under 2 minutes left in the game. Kobe's wish for a bigger role was granted. This is the infamous game where he airballed 4 shots down the stretch. Although he failed to deliver, these are the moments that prepared him to be a killer later in his career. In his second season, this is where he started to see real playing time and show his abilities. The hype around Kobe was revving up, and many fans were starting to call him the next Michael Jordan. On December 17, 1997, Kobe and MJ went toe-to-toe in Chicago. Kobe has been waiting for this moment all his life. He scored 33 points, including this beautiful fadeaway at MJ. Jordan wasn't too shabby either, scoring 36 points and led his team to a 21-point win over the Lakers. Kobe's popularity around the league grew, and he was voted into the All-Star game as a starter by the fans. By the end of the season, Kobe more than doubled his scoring output, averaging 15.4 points compared to 7.6 from his rookie year. By his third season, Kobe was a full-time starter. Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones were traded away. Kobe nearly averaged 20 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, and 3.8 assists, and was rewarded with a contract extension for 6 years, $70 million, but yet not much playoff success, as the Lakers were swept by the San Antonio Spurs. After a couple of disappointing playoff runs, Phil Jackson was hired as the new coach, and the team moved into a new stadium, Staples Center. After falling short in the playoff, everything fell into place starting in the 1999-2000 season. Shaq had his best year, taking home the MVP. Kobe improved drastically. Together they were the dynamic duo Jerry West envisioned when he paired them together. Shaq was dominant inside, while Kobe closed the show down the stretch. Kobe averaged 22.5 points, 6.3 rebounds, and 4.9 assists, and finished on the second All-NBA team and defensive first team. At just 21 years old, Kobe was turning into a superstar. On 3 separate occasions, the Lakers won 10-plus games, including a 19-game winning streak. The Lakers are dominant, going 6-7-15, and primed for a long playoff run. LA took care of business against Sacramento and Phoenix in the first 2 rounds. In their Western Conference Finals, Portland gave the Lakers the toughest challenge. Behind Shaq's brilliance, LA took a commanding 3-1 lead after 4 games, but Portland would rally to win the next 2 games, setting up a winner-take-all Game 7. The veteran Trailblazers were in total control of Game 7, up 15 points in the fourth quarter. The Trailblazers have silenced the Rockets crowd at Staples Center, but that's when the Lakers started a hellacious comeback. Shaq and Kobe put the exclamation point on the comeback when Kobe crossed up Scottie Pippen and tossed a lob to Shaq, sending the Blazers home. LA headed to the finals to play the Indiana Pacers. Shaq was a beast in the paint, and beyond his play, the Lakers took a 2-3-1 lead after 3 games. It was in Game 4 of the NBA Finals where Kobe had his coming out party. Shaq fouled in overtime, and Phil Jackson turned to Kobe to carry the team home. Remember when Kobe airballed those shots against Utah? Well, this time, he was drilling them. A young Kobe made clutch play after play. This performance is a foreshadow to Kobe's career. The physical toughness, emotional determination, and craving for pressure. Kobe scored 8 points in the overtime win in Game 4, outdueling Hall of Famer Reggie Miller to take a commanding 3-1 lead. Shaq and Kobe would eventually win their first championship in 6 games. With the championship swagger, the 2001 Lakers were just a force to be reckoned with. Shaq and Kobe were spectacular as usual. The Lakers are just simply too good in the playoff. No one stood a chance. Shaq was in his prime, dunking on everyone. Kobe was a young superstar, ready to take over at any moment. LA destroyed everyone in their path, especially San Antonio, who they beat by an average of over 22 points per game in the Western Conference Finals. Kobe showed the world how good he was by setting the tone in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals against San Antonio, where he scored 45 points, and the Lakers never looked back after that. The only blunder during that playoff run was losing to Allen Iverson in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. In the playoffs that year, the Lakers went 15-1, which was a record at the time, broken by the 2017 Golden State Warriors. This title was extra sweet as it took place in Kobe's hometown, and to put the icing on the cake, Kobe married Vanessa in that same year, winning on and off the court. The next season, 2001-2002, Shaq and Kobe remained dominant. At the All-Star Game in Philadelphia, Kobe picked up his first All-Star Game MVP. The Lakers took their foot off the gas pedal and finished third in the West, but that didn't slow them down once the playoff came. Los Angeles kept the season off by winning their 3rd straight championship, sweeping the New Jersey Nets in the finals. But by far the toughest series was in the Western Conference Finals against Sacramento. The Kings gave LA everything they wanted. It even took a buzzer beater from Robert Horry to keep the Lakers alive. Both teams fought to the end, but the Lakers prevailed in a classic Game 7. After 3 championships in a row, the Lakers were the team. Shaq and Kobe were the man. No one could stop them. Shaq was in the middle of his prime. Kobe just 23 years old. We all figured the Lakers would keep on winning. In the 2002-2003 season, Kobe had his best year playing next to Shaq. Kobe would play his childhood idol Michael Jordan one last time and drop 55 on MJ in the Wizards. Kobe averaged 30 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 5.9 assists per game and played all 82 games that year. But the Spurs took out the Lakers in the second round. Tim Duncan outdueled Shaq and Kobe, eventually leading the Spurs to a championship that year. In the offseason, Kobe was in Colorado for a knee surgery. Kobe would find himself in deep water, potentially facing jail time. Kobe was accused of sexual assault. His marriage was in jeopardy. On the court, the Lakers made a big splash by signing Gary Payton and Karl Malone, 2 future Hall of Famers at the end of their career looking for one last chance at NBA gold. Payton and Malone instantly made Los Angeles the title favorite. On paper, the Lakers were stacked, but there were a ton of issues in the locker room. Shaq and Kobe have always had their disagreements, but perhaps it was water under the bridge because of all the winning. But in the 2003-2004 season, their feud reached its peak, both guys taking shots at each other in the media. Payton never quite found his footing in Phil Jackson's triangle offense. Malone and Shaq missed significant times with injuries. There were a ton of uncertainties in Kobe's future as his legal battles continue. There were several times where Kobe would be in Colorado sitting in a courtroom and then fly back to LA for a game at night. This just shows you how tough this dude really is and his love for the game. Eventually the case was dropped as the accuser was unwilling to testify. Despite all the drama on and off the court, the Lakers managed to finish their 2003-2004 season 56-26. Kobe ended the season with a bang, hitting 2 ridiculous shots in Portland to help secure the division title over Sacramento. In the playoffs, the Lakers took care of business in the West, defeating Houston, San Antonio, and Minnesota, earning a trip to the finals to play the Detroit Pistons. On paper, it looks like a total mismatch. The Lakers are loaded with superstars, experience, and Hall of Famers. But as we all know, basketball isn't play on paper. It's play on the hardwood. Many people thought Detroit would get hammered, but instead, it was the other way around. The Pistons defense clamped down LA's offense and routed the Lakers in 5 games. The Lakers were lucky this series wasn't a sweep. When the Lakers walked off the court under the Pistons' confetti, the dynasty was over. Shaq and Kobe could no longer exist together, and Phil Jackson had enough of the drama. He resigned. The Lakers organization had to pick their man, Shaq or Kobe. Ultimately, Lakers owner Jerry Buss decided to keep the younger Kobe. Shaq was traded to Miami for Lamar Odom and some role players. Karl Malone retired and Gary Payton was traded to Boston. The super team was no more. The 2004-2005 season began with Kobe as the clear leader of the team. With no veteran support to lean on, the team struggled. The matchup between Kobe and Shaq on Christmas Day was one of the most anticipated games of all time. Till this day, this game is still the most watched game in the history of NBA Christmas games. Kobe would score 42 points against Shaq, but Miami came out victorious. The Lakers struggled all year, finished with only 34 wins, missing the playoff for the first time in 11 years. The 2005-2006 season saw the return of Phil Jackson back on the Lakers bench. This was a remarkable season for Kobe. Individually, he did some things we've never seen before. He outscored the whole Mavericks team by himself. After 3 quarters, Kobe had 62 points. The Mavs scored 61 as a team combined. Let that sink in for a minute. This is the Dallas team that had a prime Dirk Nowitzki and the eventual Western Conference champion that year. LA blew out the Mavericks, so Kobe didn't need to play in the fourth quarter, but imagine what he did. A few games later, Kobe would outdo himself again, this time scoring 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. With the Lakers down by 18 points in the third quarter, Kobe took over, scoring 55 of the 81 points in the second half. Kobe was simply amazing. This is the second most points scored in a game, only behind Wilt Chamberlain, who scored 100 points in 1962. Kobe was spectacular and won his first scoring title, putting up 35.4 points per game along with 5.3 rebounds and 4.5 assists. Behind Kobe's marvelous play, the Lakers finished the season 45-37, good for the 7th seed in the West, and faced the Phoenix Suns in the first round. During Game 4 of this series, Kobe's incredible shot making was on full display. With 6 seconds left, LA down 1, Kobe hit this dagger to give them a commanding 3-1 lead. However, this was the last one they got in the series. Despite a heroic effort by Kobe in Game 6, scoring 50 points, Phoenix came out victorious. With the series all squared up at 3 games apiece, heading to Game 7, people were criticizing Kobe, calling him selfish and a ball hawk for not getting his teammates involved. Kobe responded by practically refusing to shoot the ball. Kobe took 3 shots in the second half, and the Suns ran the Lakers out of the gym, winning by 31 points. The 2006-2007 was more or less a microcosm of the previous year. Individually, Kobe was great. He had a 4-game stretch where he scored 50 or more points in 4 straight games, 65 against the Blazers, 50 on Minnesota, 60 on Memphis, and 50 against the Hornets. Add another scoring title for the Black Mamba. Kobe dragged the Lakers to the playoff, but again, Phoenix eliminated them in the first round, this time in 5 games. After 2 disappointing playoff run and lack of talent around him, Kobe was fed up with the losing. He asked for a trade in the offseason. Kobe was eager to move on. Chicago was a city Bryant wanted to play for, but the deal fell apart when the Bulls refused to add Luol Deng in the trade. As it turns out, staying in LA would turn out to be the best thing. The 2007-2008 season saw the Lakers return to glory. With the emergence of young Andrew Bynum, the Lakers got up to a great start at 25-11. But Bynum would suffer a season-ending injury, leaving a big void to fill. And this is where Pau Gasol comes into the equation. The Lakers acquired Pau from Memphis in exchange for essentially Kwame Brown and Marc Gasol, which was widely considered criminal at the time. But in the years since, this deal has actually turned out to be pretty equal for both sides. Gasol blended beautifully in the triangle offense as the Lakers ended the season winning 22 of their last 27 games. LA finished with the best record in the West, and Kobe was awarded the MVP, the only time in his career he won that award. In the playoffs, the Lakers wasted little time defeating Denver, Utah, and San Antonio, setting up a finals matchup against their longtime rival, the Boston Celtics. The Lakers were good, but Boston's victory with KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen was just too much to overcome, defeating LA in 6 games. With the bitter taste of losing to the Celtics fresh in their mind, LA came back laser focused to begin the 2008-2009 season. They opened the season 14-1 and were 42-10 at the All-Star break. Kobe put on a masterful performance in New York, scoring an MSG record 61 points against the Knicks. A full season of playing next to Pau Gasol helps. and having healthy Andrew Bynum for the playoff makes a big difference. LA finished the season with the second best record in the NBA. Only Cleveland had a better record. In the playoff, they were tested with a 7-game series versus Houston in the second round, and battled Carmelo Anthony and the Denver Nuggets in 6 tough games before reaching the NBA Finals. In the finals, LA faced a young Orlando Magic team led by Dwight Howard. Kobe and company quickly took care of business in 5 games. Kobe was vindicated, finally winning a championship without being in the shadows of Shaq. Kobe averaged 32.4 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 7.4 assists in the finals, and earned his first finals MVP. To defend the title, the Lakers added Ron Artest to shore up the defense. Again, the Lakers got up to a strong start. This was a historic season where Kobe hit 6 game winners, either at the buzzer or with minimal time left. Kobe was magical throughout the season, and Pau Gasol was arguably the best offensive big man. The addition of Artest paid off when he put in a game-winning shot against Phoenix in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. LA never looked back after that and went on to the finals for a rematch of the 2008 finals against the Boston Celtics. The 2010 finals was a tough and hard-fought series for both teams, as they left it all on the court, nip and tuck, each team stealing road wins, but the Lakers overcame a 13-point deficit in the third quarter of Game 7 to capture their second consecutive title. For Kobe, this one was extra special, for 2 reasons. 1. Kobe surpassed Shaq in the rings category, 5 rings to 4. 2. They avenged the loss from 2 years ago. As for Phil Jackson, he now has 11 rings as a coach. Prior to the start of the 2010-2011 season, Phil Jackson announced that this will be his final year coaching. LA was gunning for a 3-peat. After all, that's all Phil and Kobe knows when it comes to winning championships. Kobe led the team in scoring again and play all 82 games despite lingering knee pain that kept him limited during practice. LA finished second in the West and took care of business in the first round against New Orleans. But in the second round versus the Dallas Mavericks, this is where they will stumble. Up to this point, the Lakers have won 9 consecutive playoff series, but that streak will come to an ugly end. Kobe was solid in the series, but with minimal help, the Lakers were swept out of the playoff. Kobe was showing signs of age and the Lakers needed another superstar, so they swung a trade for Chris Paul. Paul would fit nicely next to Kobe and kept the championship window open longer, but not so fast. David Stern vetoed the trade, and that was the end of that. For the last 4 seasons, LA was a favorite coming out of the West, but in the 2011-2012 season, changes were on the horizon. Mike Brown took the vacant coaching spot. Kobe put up higher scoring outputs in the previous 3 years, averaging 27.9 points, along with 5.4 rebounds and 4.6 assists. Andrew Bynum was emerging as potentially their second best player, having a career year. LA finished the shortened lockout season third in the West with 41 wins and 25 losses. The Lakers barely eked by the Denver Nuggets in the first round, needing to go the distance just to advance. In the second round, OKC quickly dismantled the Lakers in 5 games. The young trio of Russ, KD, and Harden were just too much to handle. That sounds a little crazy when you actually think about it, but Game 5 in OKC was the last playoff game Kobe played in his career. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? Coming off an early playoff exit, LA reloaded by getting 2-time MVP Steve Nash, and then made a blockbuster move by acquiring Dwight Howard in a 4-team, 12 players, and 5-pick trade. Dwight Howard was the crown jewel of this trade, and now with the core of Bryant, Nash, Howard, and Gasol, many experts have them as a team to beat. On paper, the Lakers looked formidable, but on the court, that was far from the truth. Steve Nash was injured in his second game of the season in Portland and nearly missed 2 months. Dwight Howard, who was supposed to be the next face of the franchise, didn't fare much better either. Dwight wasn't quite himself recovering from back surgery. Mike Brown was fired after 5 games and replaced by Mike D'Antoni. There was certainly chaos in Hollywood, and on top of all of that, Kobe and Dwight never got along as teammates. Their personalities never matched. Kobe was very serious, while Dwight is laid back and even goofy. The Lakers struggled all season and were in danger of missing the playoff. Kobe was logging heavy minutes, putting the team on his back, and eventually, his body gave out. In Game 80 of 82, Kobe tore his Achilles tendon against the Golden State Warriors, and his career would never be the same. The Lakers squeezed into the playoff, but without Bryant, they were no match for the Spurs in the first round. Dwight bolted to Houston in the offseason. An Achilles tear is a devastating injury that's ruined the career of many players, but Kobe isn't an ordinary player. Rehab was going great. Just after 8 months of tearing his Achilles, Kobe was back in the court. However, it was short-lived. Kobe played a grand total of 6 games in the 2013-14 season and was silent for the remainder of the season due to a left knee injury. Obviously, without Kobe, the Lakers struggle. Steve Nash retired at the end of the season, and Coach D'Antoni resigned. Pau Gasol, who helped the Lakers win 2 rings, moved on to Chicago. The 2014-15 season didn't fare much better either. On a roster full of young players, Kobe was the only veteran on the club. On December 14, 2014, against the Minnesota Timberwolves, Kobe surpassed his childhood idol, Michael Jordan, for 3rd all-time on the NBA scoring list. And 5 weeks later, Kobe tore his rotator cuff after a dunk against the Pelicans, and his season was over after just playing 35 games. The 2015-16 season will be Kobe's 20th and last season. Kobe, a player hated by so many fan base, was showered with cheers in every opposing arena. There were many nagging injuries, bumps and bruises, but Kobe managed to play 66 games and save his best for last. In his finals performance, Kobe went out with a bang, doing what Kobe does best. He scored 60 points, hitting clutch shots down the stretch as the Lakers came back and beat Utah. He couldn't jump as high, move as fast, but that fadeaway is still as pretty as ever. Kobe was without a doubt one of the best players of all time. You can't have a GOAT conversation without mentioning Kobe. He spent his entire career playing for one team. That's something that is rarely seen. His list of accomplishments are long, but these are the most notable. 5-time champion, 2-time finals MVP, 1-time regular season MVP, 18-time All-Star, 4-time All-Star MVP, 15-time All-NBA player, 12-time All-Defensive team, a member of the 75th anniversary team, and a Hall of Famer. For his career, he averaged 25 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 4.7 assists per game. He finished 4th all-time in scoring with 33,643 points. Today, Kobe is no longer making highlights on the court, but his Mamba mentality lives on. Many players have carried on that mindset. On January 26, 2020, the sports world lost one of its greatest athletes. Kobe, his daughter Gigi, along with 7 people who boarded the helicopter that day, tragically passed away on a routine ride to a basketball game. I remember exactly where I was when I heard the news. My body went numb. I couldn't believe the news, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that. Fans flooded Staples Center, leaving flowers, balloons, basketballs, and anything that reminded them of Kobe. I wasn't the biggest Kobe fan, but I appreciated his greatness. Kobe was truly one of a kind. Gone too soon at the age of 41.